Dr. Michael Harrison stepped aboard Helios Prime Research Station with the excitement of someone whose career had just taken an unexpected leap toward the extraordinary, blissfully unaware that his recruitment for a routine genetic compatibility study was about to become the most personally complicated scientific assignment in human history. The station itself was a marvel of Veilthura engineering, featuring organic-looking architecture that seemed to have grown rather than been constructed, and environmental systems that maintained perfect atmospheric conditions while somehow making the entire facility feel alive. Dr. Harrison greeted Dr. Lisa Velnara, the Veilthura scientist whose communication had brought him here, her elegant pointed ears and ethereal beauty making her appear like someone from humanity's most idealized conception of advanced alien civilization. "Welcome to Helios Prime. I trust your journey was comfortable." "Very much so, thank you," Michael replied, trying to maintain professional composure while processing the fact that his new colleague was even more striking in person than her holographic transmissions had suggested. "Though I have to admit, your facility is significantly more impressive than the research briefings indicated. This looks less like a laboratory and more like a bioengineering cathedral." "An apt observation," Lisa said with what appeared to be genuine amusement. Veilthura architectural philosophy emphasizes harmony between technological function and biological aesthetics. We believe that research environments should inspire rather than merely contain scientific inquiry. As they toured the facility, Michael began to understand that the scope of the Genesis protocol exceeded anything described in his initial recruitment materials. The laboratories featured technology that seemed to blur the line between engineering and biology, with equipment that responded to biological signals and monitoring systems that appeared to be living organisms integrated with mechanical components. "Dr. Velnara," Michael said, examining a genetic analysis system that looked like it had been grown in a garden rather than manufactured in a factory, "exactly how long have the Veilthura been preparing for this research project?" "Please, call me Lisa," she replied, leading him toward what appeared to be the facility's central research area. "And to answer your question, we've been developing the theoretical framework for the Genesis protocol for approximately 47 of your years, with active preparation beginning 12 years ago when we achieved sufficient understanding of human genetics to proceed with practical implementation." 47 years. Michael stopped walking, processing the implications of research that had been ongoing since before he was born. This isn't a new project exploring possibilities, this is the culmination of decades of planned research. "Correct," Lisa agreed with the matter-of-fact tone of someone discussing routine scientific methodology. "Interspecies genetic integration requires extensive preparation to ensure optimal outcomes for all participants. We don't approach such significant evolutionary steps without thorough analysis and careful planning." Michael felt the first stirring of suspicion that his role in this project might be more complex than he'd understood. "When you say participants, are you referring to research subjects or active contributors to the genetic integration process?" Lisa paused in their tour, studying Michael with the careful attention of someone evaluating how much information to share with a colleague who was still adjusting to the full scope of their collaboration. "Dr. Harrison, Michael, perhaps we should discuss the complete parameters of the Genesis protocol before you see the rest of our facility." They settled in a consultation area that managed to be both clinically precise and surprisingly comfortable, with seating that adjusted automatically to Michael's physiology and environmental controls that seemed to respond to his stress levels. Lisa activated holographic displays that showed genetic compatibility matrices, population projections, and evolutionary models that painted a picture of ambition that exceeded anything Michael had imagined. "The Veilthura face an evolutionary crisis," Lisa began, her scientific presentation carrying undertones of personal concern that suggested this wasn't just academic research for her. "Our species has achieved technological advancement and social stability that eliminated natural selection pressures, resulting in genetic uniformity that threatens our long-term survival." "Genetic uniformity how?" Michael asked, studying displays that showed Veilthura population genetics with the kind of mathematical precision that made human demographic studies look like rough estimates. "We've optimized for intelligence, longevity, and technological aptitude through thousands of years of selective development," Lisa explained. "But optimization for specific traits has eliminated the genetic diversity that allows populations to adapt to changing conditions. We're essentially a species of genetic specialists who lack the adaptability necessary for long-term survival. The implications were staggering as Michael realized what Lisa was describing. You're talking about species-wide genetic vulnerability. A single disease or environmental change could affect your entire population because you lack sufficient genetic variation to produce resistant individuals. Precisely, Lisa agreed. Which is why we've spent decades studying human genetics. Your species demonstrates remarkable adaptive capabilities and genetic diversity that could complement our specialized development. The Genesis protocol is designed to create hybrid offspring that combine Veilthera optimization with human adaptability. Michael stared at the genetic compatibility charts that showed his own DNA profile highlighted among dozens of potential human contributors. Lisa, are you telling me that I wasn't recruited as a research scientist, I was recruited as a potential genetic donor? You were recruited as both, Lisa corrected with obvious enthusiasm for the scientific possibilities. Your expertise in xenobiology makes you invaluable for understanding the integration process, while your specific genetic profile indicates exceptional compatibility for producing enhanced hybrid offspring. Enhanced how? Lisa's excitement became evident as she detailed the projected capabilities of human Veilthera hybrids, extended lifespans that could exceed both parent species, cognitive abilities that combined human creativity with Veilthera analytical precision, physical capabilities optimized for survival in hostile environments, an intuitive understanding of biotechnology that would allow rapid adaptation to changing conditions. The resulting children would essentially represent the next stage of evolutionary development for both our species, Lisa concluded. They would possess capabilities that neither humans nor Veilthera could achieve independently, while retaining the cultural and psychological flexibility necessary for continued adaptation. Michael processed this information while studying displays that showed projected hybrid characteristics with the kind of detail that suggested extensive computer modeling and simulation. This is incredible science, he said finally, but it's also the most ambitious genetic engineering project ever attempted. Are you certain about the ethical implications of consciously designing a new form of sentient life? We've considered the ethical dimensions extensively, Lisa assured him. All human participants are volunteers who understand the full scope of the project and choose to contribute based on informed consent. The hybrid children will be raised with full knowledge of their heritage and purpose, with educational and social support that ensures their successful integration into galactic society. And what about the parents? What kind of relationship exists between human fathers and Veilthera mothers in this arrangement? Lisa's expression shifted to something that might have been personal interest rather than scientific detachment. That depends on the individuals involved, she said carefully. The protocol accommodates various approaches to partnership, from purely reproductive collaboration to long-term pair bonding that includes emotional attachment and shared child-rearing responsibilities. Michael found himself studying Lisa's face, wondering whether her scientific enthusiasm was entirely professional or whether she had personal interests in the outcomes of human Veilthera integration. And what approach do you prefer? I believe, Lisa said with what was definitely personal rather than scientific consideration, that the most successful hybrid development occurs when parents share genuine connection rather than merely genetic compatibility. Emotional bonding appears to optimize both the reproductive process and the subsequent child-rearing environment. Interesting hypothesis, Michael said, understanding that their conversation had evolved beyond scientific briefing into something more personal. I suppose the only way to test that theory would be through direct experimentation. Indeed, Lisa agreed, her smile suggesting that the Genesis protocol was about to become significantly more complex than Michael had anticipated. Though I should warn you that volunteering for this research tends to result in permanent lifestyle changes that exceed standard scientific career expectations. Michael looked around the facility that was beginning to feel less like a laboratory and more like a new home, understanding that his decision about participating in the Genesis protocol would affect much more than his professional future. Dr. Velnara, he said with growing certainty about his choice, I think I'm ready to learn about the complete parameters of this project. Excellent, Lisa replied, her obvious satisfaction suggesting that his recruitment had been even more successful than the Veilthera had hoped. Because the most interesting part of the Genesis protocol is just beginning. The Genesis Protocol's true scope became apparent during Michael's first week at Helios Prime, as he discovered that the Veilthra had created what amounted to a comprehensive civilization dedicated to the systematic development of human Veilthra hybrid offspring. The facility included not just research laboratories, but living quarters designed for long-term partnerships, educational systems for hybrid children, and environmental controls that could optimize conditions for interspecies reproduction and child development. "Michael," Lisa said as she guided him through the residential sections, "I should probably explain that the Genesis Protocol operates on timescales that exceed typical research projects. Successful interspecies integration requires years of development, monitoring, and optimization." "How many years are we talking about?" Michael asked, noting that the living quarters were designed for comfort and permanence rather than temporary research assignments. "The initial reproductive phase requires approximately 2 years of preparation, conception, and gestation," Lisa explained, activating displays that showed development timelines with the precision of project management software. "Hybrid childhood development involves an additional 15 to 20 years of specialized education and monitoring. Full integration into galactic society typically occurs around age 25, when hybrids achieve complete psychological and social maturity." Michael stared at the timelines, understanding that participation in the Genesis Protocol wasn't a research assignment, it was a life commitment that would span decades. "You're talking about establishing permanent communities dedicated to creating and raising a new species." "Exactly," Lisa agreed with obvious enthusiasm for the long-term vision. "The Genesis colonies will become the foundation for human Veilthra civilization, serving as centers for continued genetic and cultural evolution while producing individuals capable of expanding into environments that neither parent species could inhabit." Their tour continued through educational facilities that featured technology designed to optimize learning for hybrid children whose cognitive development would exceed both human and Veilthra baselines. The systems included adaptive interfaces that responded to individual learning patterns, virtual reality environments that could simulate any conceivable situation, and social development programs that prepared hybrid children for leadership roles in galactic civilization. "The hybrid children will be educated from birth to understand their unique capabilities and responsibilities," Lisa explained, showing Michael classrooms that looked more like advanced simulation centers than traditional educational environments. "They'll receive training in both human and Veilthra cultural traditions, advanced scientific and technological education, and leadership development that prepares them for roles in interspecies diplomacy and colonization." "What kind of capabilities are we expecting these children to have?" Michael asked, studying projections that suggested hybrid development would exceed anything in human or Veilthra experience. "Cognitive enhancement appears to be the most significant advantage," Lisa said, highlighting brain development models that showed integration between human creative thinking and Veilthra analytical processing. "Hybrid children demonstrate learning rates approximately 3 times faster than either parent species, with problem-solving capabilities that combine intuitive leaps with systematic analysis. Physical capabilities show similar enhancement," she continued, displaying projections of strength, endurance, and adaptive capacity that approached theoretical maximums for biological systems. "Hybrid physiology includes human resilience and adaptability integrated with Veilthra optimization for efficiency and longevity." Michael examined the projections with growing amazement and concern about the implications of creating beings whose capabilities would so significantly exceed their parents. "Lisa, we're talking about children who will be fundamentally different from either humans or Veilthra. How do we ensure they'll identify with either species, or choose to maintain connections with the civilizations that created them? That's why parental bonding is so critical to the protocol's success," Lisa said, her scientific explanation carrying personal undertones that suggested she'd given significant thought to the emotional aspects of hybrid development. "Children who grow up with strong connections to both parents tend to develop integrated identity that values both human and Veilthra heritage while establishing their own unique cultural perspectives." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Cale Thorne, a human xenobiologist who had been participating in the Genesis Protocol for 18 months. His obvious health, vitality, and satisfaction with his circumstances provided Michael with the first direct evidence of how human participation in the program actually worked in practice. "Michael, Kale said with genuine enthusiasm, "Lisa's given you the scientific overview, but I thought you might want to hear about the practical experience from someone who's been through the process." "Definitely," Michael replied, noting that Kale appeared to have benefited significantly from whatever treatments or enhancements the Veilthera had provided to human participants. "The integration process is remarkable," Kale explained, settling into the consultation area with the comfort of someone who felt entirely at home in the Veilthera facility. "They don't just optimize reproductive compatibility, they enhance human physiology to ensure the best possible outcomes for both parents and children." "Enhancement how?" "Longevity treatments that extend human lifespan to match Veilthera standards, cognitive improvements that enhance learning and memory formation, physical optimization that increases strength and endurance while improving disease resistance," Kale listed with obvious appreciation for the benefits he'd received. "And the relationship aspects?" Michael asked, noting the way Kale's expression softened when discussing what were obviously personal rather than scientific considerations. "That's the most surprising part," Kale said with genuine warmth. "The Veilthera approach to partnership formation is both more systematic and more emotionally satisfying than anything in human relationship traditions. They've essentially optimized for compatibility at every level: intellectual, emotional, physical, and reproductive." Lisa activated displays that showed partnership compatibility matrices with the kind of precision typically reserved for engineering specifications. "Successful hybrid development requires optimal partnership dynamics between parents," she explained. "We've developed assessment protocols that identify compatibility factors across multiple dimensions to ensure stable, supportive relationships that benefit both participants and their children." "You've scientifically optimized romantic compatibility?" Michael asked with amusement and growing appreciation for Veilthera thoroughness. "We've identified the factors that predict successful long-term partnerships and developed matching protocols that maximize the probability of positive outcomes," Lisa corrected with what might have been slight embarrassment at the clinical description of romance. "Though participants report that systematic compatibility assessment enhances rather than reduces emotional connection." "It's true," Kale confirmed. "When you know that someone is compatible with you at every measurable level, it creates confidence that allows deeper emotional intimacy than would typically develop during early relationship phases." Michael found himself looking at Lisa with new understanding of why his recruitment to the Genesis Protocol had felt more like courtship than professional hiring. "So my selection as a research participant included evaluation of my compatibility with specific Veilthera partners?" "Your genetic, intellectual, and psychological profiles indicate exceptional compatibility with several Veilthera researchers," Lisa admitted, her obvious personal interest making the scientific assessment feel distinctly romantic. "Though final partnership decisions are made by the individuals involved rather than predetermined by compatibility analysis." "And if I were to volunteer for the program," Michael said, understanding that his decision was becoming increasingly likely, "what would the timeline look like?" "Phase 1 involves 6 months of preparation that includes enhancement treatments, cultural integration, and relationship development with your chosen partner," Lisa explained, her scientific presentation unable to mask what was clearly personal investment in his decision. "Phase 2 focuses on reproductive optimization and conception, which typically requires 3 to 6 months depending on individual circumstances. Phase 3 is gestation and early childhood development, during which both parents receive ongoing support and education about hybrid child rearing," she continued. "Phase 4 involves long-term partnership and family development that extends throughout the child's educational period and beyond." Michael processed the implications of a program that was offering him not just career advancement, but comprehensive life enhancement and the opportunity to participate in the most significant evolutionary development in galactic history. "Lisa," he said, making his decision with the certainty of someone who recognized an extraordinary opportunity, "I'd like to volunteer for the Genesis Protocol." "Excellent," she replied, her professional satisfaction enhanced by obvious personal pleasure at his choice. "Though I should mention that protocol requirements include selection of a compatible Veilthera partner for the integration process. Any recommendations?" Michael asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. I might have some suggestions, Lisa said with a smile that made it clear the Genesis Protocol was about to become the most personally rewarding scientific collaboration of both their careers. The partnership integration process began with what Lisa diplomatically described as comprehensive compatibility optimization, which Michael discovered involved biological enhancements that exceeded his most optimistic expectations about alien medical technology. The Veilthera approach to preparing human participants for interspecies reproduction included treatments that enhanced every aspect of his physiology while ensuring optimal outcomes for both partners and their future children. The enhancement protocols are designed to maximize your natural capabilities rather than replacing them with artificial modifications, Lisa explained as Michael underwent treatments that made him feel more vital and energetic than he'd ever experienced. We're optimizing your existing genetic potential while ensuring compatibility with Veilthera reproductive biology. Optimizing how? Michael asked, noting that the treatments were having effects that went far beyond simple medical improvement. His cognitive clarity had increased dramatically, his physical strength and endurance were approaching superhuman levels, and his overall sense of well-being suggested that human biology had capabilities he'd never accessed. Longevity enhancement extends your cellular regeneration capacity to match Veilthera standards, Lisa said, monitoring his progress through bio-readings that showed improvements he wouldn't have believed possible. Cognitive optimization enhances neural connectivity and processing speed while maintaining your distinctly human patterns of creative thinking. Physical enhancement improves strength, coordination, and disease resistance while preserving the adaptability that makes human genetics so valuable. The results were remarkable as Michael found himself operating at levels of capability that felt like awakening abilities he'd always possessed but never accessed. His collaboration with Lisa on Genesis Protocol research became significantly more effective as his enhanced cognitive capabilities allowed him to process Veilthera scientific concepts with unprecedented clarity. Michael, Lisa said during one of their research sessions, your integration with the enhancement protocols is exceeding our projections. Your cognitive development is approaching hybrid baseline levels while maintaining distinctly human psychological patterns. What does that mean for the Genesis Protocol? It means that the offspring of enhanced humans and Veilthera partners may demonstrate capabilities that exceed our original projections, Lisa explained with obvious excitement about the scientific possibilities. Your children could represent an even more significant evolutionary advancement than we initially calculated. Their professional collaboration was complicated by the growing personal connection that developed as they worked together on research that would determine the future of both their species. Michael found himself attracted to Lisa not just for her beauty and intelligence, but for her vision of interspecies cooperation that transcended the boundaries that had traditionally separated galactic civilizations. Lisa, Michael said during one of their evening consultations, I need to ask you something personal rather than scientific. Of course, she replied, though her expression suggested she anticipated the direction of his question. Are your feelings for me genuine, or are they influenced by the compatibility optimization and partnership protocols that the Genesis program has developed? Lisa was quiet for several minutes, studying Michael with the kind of careful attention she usually reserved for complex scientific problems. That's a more complicated question than you might expect, she said finally. The compatibility protocols identify factors that predict successful relationships, but they don't create emotions or attractions that weren't already possible. So the optimization enhances natural compatibility rather than manufacturing artificial attraction? Exactly, Lisa confirmed. The protocols simply ensure that compatible individuals have opportunities to recognize their compatibility without the barriers that typically prevent interspecies relationships from developing. And what do you feel for me, beyond scientific collaboration and genetic compatibility? Lisa's smile carried warmth that had nothing to do with research protocols or enhancement procedures. I feel that you represent everything I find attractive in a partner. Intelligence, humor, dedication to scientific advancement, and the kind of moral courage that leads someone to volunteer for a project that could reshape galactic civilization. Additionally, she continued with obvious personal investment, I find myself looking forward to conversations with you that have nothing to do with the Genesis Protocol, wanting to share experiences with you that extend beyond our research, and hoping that our partnership will develop into something that transcends the scientific objectives that brought us together. Michael felt relief and growing certainty about the direction their relationship was taking. Lisa, I think I'm falling in love with you in ways that have nothing to do with genetic compatibility or enhancement protocols. I'm pleased to hear that, she replied, moving closer with the grace that made every Veilthra movement seem choreographed for aesthetic perfection. Because I've been experiencing similar emotional development that suggests our partnership could be successful on multiple levels simultaneously. Their first attempt at conception occurred 3 months into the integration process, in an environment that had been optimized for interspecies reproduction through technology that seemed to blur the line between science and art. The Veilthra approach to reproductive support included monitoring systems that ensured optimal conditions while providing privacy and emotional support that made the experience feel romantic rather than clinical. The conception process involves more than simple biological reproduction, Lisa explained as they prepared for the procedure that would determine whether their partnership could produce the hybrid children that represented the Genesis Protocol's ultimate objective. Successful interspecies reproduction requires psychological and emotional synchronization that enhances biological compatibility. What kind of synchronization? Mental connection that allows both partners to optimize their biological systems for successful conception and development, Lisa said, activating monitoring systems that would track not just their physical responses but their psychological integration. The process requires trust, emotional openness, and shared commitment to the outcomes that exceed typical reproductive requirements. The conception was successful, creating life that represented more than just their personal partnership. It was the beginning of a new form of consciousness that would combine human and Veilthra capabilities in ways that neither species could achieve independently. The monitoring systems confirmed that their developing child showed genetic integration patterns that exceeded the protocol's most optimistic projections. Michael, Lisa said as they reviewed the genetic analysis of their developing child, our daughter is demonstrating integration levels that suggest she'll possess capabilities that exceed both our species' current limitations. What kind of capabilities? Cognitive development that combines human creative intuition with Veilthra analytical precision, physical capabilities optimized for survival in hostile environments, and genetic adaptability that would allow her to thrive in conditions that would challenge either parent species, Lisa explained with obvious pride and anticipation. She's going to be remarkable, Michael said, understanding that their child would represent the first member of a species designed for exploration and adaptation that would carry consciousness into regions of space where no existing species could survive. She's going to be the future, Lisa agreed, settling into Michael's arms with the contentment of someone who had found both professional success and personal happiness. Our daughter will be among the first of a new form of life that will reshape what's possible for galactic civilization. Michael looked at the genetic projections that showed his daughter's developing capabilities, understanding that his participation in the Genesis Protocol had given him something he'd never expected, not just enhanced personal capabilities and professional advancement, but the opportunity to father children who would help guide the next phase of evolution for both human and Veilthra civilizations. Lisa, he said, feeling complete satisfaction with choices that had transformed his life in ways he couldn't have imagined, I think we're about to discover what happens when love and science work together to create something unprecedented. I think, Lisa replied with happiness that transcended scientific achievement, we're about to create the future. 5 years after the birth of their daughter Aria, Michael stood in the observation deck of New Genesis Colony, watching hybrid children play in environments that would have been lethal to either human or Veilthra physiology, while their adaptive capabilities allowed them to thrive in conditions that represented the expanding frontier of galactic civilization. The Genesis Protocol had succeeded beyond its creator's most ambitious projections, producing not just enhanced individuals but the foundation for entirely new approaches to consciousness, society, and exploration. Papa, Aria called from the adaptive environment chamber, her voice carrying the musical quality inherited from her Veilthra heritage while her words demonstrated the creative language development that characterized hybrid cognitive abilities. Watch me make the gravity dance. Michael observed his daughter manipulate the chamber's gravitational controls with intuitive understanding that exceeded the technological training available to most adult engineers. At 5 years old, Arya could interface directly with Veilthra biotechnology while demonstrating problem-solving approaches that combined human innovation with alien precision. "Remarkable," said Dr. Elena Vasquez, the human xenobiologist who had joined the Genesis program to study hybrid development. "Arya's technological interface capabilities have exceeded all our baseline projections. She's essentially teaching us new applications for technology that we designed." "All the hybrid children show similar technological intuition," Lisa observed, her role as director of hybrid development allowing her to monitor the progress of dozens of human Veilthra children throughout the colony. "They appear to understand the principles underlying biotechnology at levels that suggest consciousness enhancement rather than simple intellectual development." Michael watched Arya collaborate with other hybrid children to solve environmental challenges that required capabilities neither human nor Veilthra intelligence could address independently. Their play involved creating solutions to problems that had puzzled adult scientists, demonstrating that hybrid development was producing beings whose capabilities truly exceeded the sum of their genetic components. "Michael," Lisa said, joining him at the observation station, "the Colonial Council has approved expansion of the Genesis program to include 12 additional systems. Our success here has attracted interest from throughout the galaxy. How do you feel about scaling up to that level?" Michael asked, understanding that program expansion would transform their experimental colony into the center of a new form of civilization. Excited and slightly overwhelmed, Lisa admitted with the honesty that had characterized their partnership from its beginning. "We're not just creating enhanced individuals anymore, we're establishing the foundation for a species that could reshape how consciousness interacts with the universe." The colony had evolved far beyond its original research parameters to become a thriving community where human and Veilthra families worked together to raise children whose capabilities opened new possibilities for exploration, diplomacy, and scientific advancement. The hybrid children served as natural mediators between their parent species, demonstrating communication abilities that transcended cultural and biological barriers. Dr. Harrison, called Captain Sarah Chen, the colony's administrative coordinator, "We've received confirmation that the Galactic Council has formally recognized hybrid rights and citizenship. Arya and the other children are now legally acknowledged as representatives of a new species with full diplomatic status." "What does that mean practically?" Michael asked, understanding that legal recognition would create opportunities and responsibilities that the Genesis program had never anticipated. "It means that hybrid individuals can serve as official ambassadors between species, establish their own governmental structures, and make decisions about their own development and expansion without requiring approval from human or Veilthra authorities," Captain Chen explained. "Essentially," Lisa added with obvious pride, "our children have become the galaxy's first truly interspecies citizens, with capabilities and perspectives that neither parent species could provide." Michael felt profound satisfaction as he realized that his decision to participate in the Genesis protocol had contributed to something more significant than enhanced reproduction. It had helped create a new form of consciousness that could bridge the gaps between species that had previously seemed insurmountable. "Papa," Arya said, approaching with the kind of serious expression that usually indicated she was about to share insights that would challenge adult understanding of reality, "the other children and I have been discussing our responsibilities to both human and Veilthra civilizations." "What kind of responsibilities?" Michael asked, settling down to Arya's eye level to give her his complete attention. "We think we're supposed to help both species learn to work together better," she said with the matter-of-fact tone that made profound observations sound like simple statements of fact. "Our minds work differently than yours, so we can see solutions to problems that seem impossible when you try to solve them using only human thinking or only Veilthra thinking." "What kind of problems?" "Like how to explore star systems that are too dangerous for regular humans but too unpredictable for regular Veilthra," Arya explained. "Or how to communicate with species that think so differently from both humans and Veilthra that neither group can understand them alone." Michael exchanged glances with Lisa, understanding that their 5-year-old daughter was describing applications for hybrid capabilities that exceeded the Genesis protocol's original objectives. The children weren't just enhanced individuals, they were developing into natural problem solvers for challenges that required transcending the limitations of single-species thinking. Arya, Lisa said with the kind of careful attention she reserved for her most important scientific insights, do you and the other children want to help with those kinds of problems? We want to help with everything, Arya replied with the confidence of someone who had never encountered a challenge that exceeded her capabilities. That's what we're for, making impossible things possible by thinking in ways that nobody has thought before. 6 months later, Michael and Lisa stood in the ceremonial chamber of New Genesis Colony as Arya and 12 other hybrid children participated in the first Interspecies Youth Council, where they served as advisors to adult governments on problems that required perspectives that transcended traditional species limitations. Their contributions had already led to breakthroughs in diplomatic protocols, exploration strategies, and scientific research that demonstrated the practical value of consciousness that operated beyond conventional boundaries. You know, Michael said to Lisa as they watched their daughter help resolve a trade dispute between 3 different species through solutions that none of the adult negotiators had considered, when I agreed to participate in the Genesis Protocol, I thought I was volunteering for advanced reproductive research. What do you think you volunteered for now? Lisa asked with amusement at how significantly their understanding of the project had evolved. I think I volunteered to help create the next phase of galactic civilization, Michael said, watching Arya demonstrate problem-solving capabilities that suggested hybrid children would become natural leaders in interspecies cooperation. Our daughter isn't just enhanced, she's evolved. They all are, Lisa agreed, her hand finding his as they observed the children who represented their greatest scientific achievement and their most profound personal joy. The Genesis Protocol succeeded in ways we never anticipated because it created beings who transcend the limitations that we didn't even know we had. Michael felt complete satisfaction as he understood that his participation in the Genesis program had given him everything he'd never known he wanted. Enhanced personal capabilities, professional advancement, a partnership with someone who shared his values and vision, and children whose potential exceeded anything either parent species could have achieved independently. Lisa, he said, settling into comfortable observation of their daughter's continuing development, I think we've accidentally created the solution to problems that galactic civilization hasn't even encountered yet. I think, Lisa replied with the contentment of someone whose life had exceeded her highest expectations, we've created the future. And it's more beautiful than anything we could have imagined. As New Genesis Colony prepared for expansion that would establish hybrid communities throughout the galaxy, Michael and Lisa understood that their love story had become the foundation for evolutionary advancement that would reshape what consciousness could achieve when it transcended the boundaries that had traditionally separated species, cultures, and possibilities. Their children were growing up as citizens of the galaxy itself, equipped with capabilities that would allow them to explore regions of space, solve categories of problems, and establish relationships between species that would expand the definition of what life could accomplish when it refused to accept limitations as permanent conditions. The Genesis Protocol had succeeded beyond all projections, creating not just enhanced individuals but the architects of a future where cooperation exceeded competition, where differences became strengths, and where love between species could literally create new forms of consciousness capable of transforming the universe itself.